how are emotions transferred through DNA?
I look at my mom and she's always sad. So I know that's how we are in this family. I'm sad. Yay, I'm in harmony with my mom, which means I belong in my family system. Great. If I'm suddenly very, very happy, I go, oh, mom's unhappy, but I'm happy. I don't quite know how to belong here. I better be unhappy again. So we learn those emotions. So you'll come in and say to me, I've been depressed since I was a little girl. What happened when you were a little girl? Watched my mom. What happened to mom? What happened to grandma? What happened to great-grandma? Oh, great-grandma was married to the love of her life. He was killed and she was never the same after that. And she used to always say, you can't trust men because he left. And imposter syndrome is one of my favorite because there's no such thing. It's pioneer syndrome. Imposter syndrome simply says, I'm not any good at this, someone's going to find out. But what people don't realize is it's the pioneer that's going in search. So when you get those two and you reframe the one into the other, suddenly you realize you're a possibility thinker. That's why. If you listen to yourself, you're speaking the language of your system all day long. You just don't realize it. When you start to pay attention to your hot words or repetitive words or feelings that hit you for no good reason, or you have an explosion around something as simple as somebody eating a biscuit and spilling some or messing some crumbs on the carpet and say, I'm going to kill you.
Hey there, it's Sandee Sgarlata. Get ready to dive deep into incredible stories of people who've taken life's challenges and turned them into a roadmap to happiness. On this show, we're not just talking about overcoming obstacles. We're uncovering the real, gritty secrets to living a life filled with peace, joy, and genuine happiness. This is Happiness Solved. So let's get started, because happiness is a choice and the choice is yours.
Judy Wilkins-Smith, such a great pleasure to meet you. How's it going today?
Great, thank you.
So before we talk about what you do, which is, boy, I'm looking at this, make the invisible visible and the unconscious conscious. We inherit emotional DNA from our ancestors, which I do believe that. I just don't understand,
Sure,
how you do it. But you have a method that you use that I had not heard of. Before we go into that, please give your backstory. I want you to share with the audience what we were just talking about, how we have this synergies where you were a competitive roller skating judge, and I'm a retired figure skating coach, which is really cool. So I want to hear all about that and take us to how it got to where you are today.
Sure. So born and raised in South Africa, moved over to the US for a business opportunity that fell flat. Then had to get back to work very fast. But then my father was killed and he was failed in all the areas that I'd grown up with. So I was, at that stage, was a vascular hematology autotransfusion technologist. And when I moved across, those were where they failed him when he was killed in a hospital. So it was either write books or go crazy. And I figured going crazy wasn't a really good option. So it was, let's start writing books and doing that with the research. Somebody said to me, I bumped into this person who said, are you familiar with this approach? I will teach you and I'll help you. You come do my course and I'll help you with the book. So I went and did the course, and I will tell you, I got zero help with the book. But what I did do was I learned this approach. And then I'd been using it for a while, and people said to me, well, if you could do it for individuals, can you do it for organizations? And of course, the answer is yes, because organizations are people. So
Right.
it was no different. Then I'd been doing it for a while, and somebody said to me, well, of course you're going to be good at it. And I went, what? They said it came from South Africa, and I didn't know that. And the backstory to that was intriguing for me was that when I worked at the teaching hospital, when I left, there was a Zulu gentleman. Now, before we get to that, the approach that I do is based on the Zulu tribe because they don't have psychoses. And the guy who started it wanted to research why not. And it's because they look at their ancestry to figure out what's gone on there that's now repeating through me, and now something's happening. And so before I left, the person who gave my farewell speech was a Zulu doctor. And he said, you may be leaving us, but you'll find a way to represent us in the world. And went, yeah, yeah. And now I do it every day. And I have a lot of fun. I do. I teach at Disney once a year, which is my favorite place in the world.
And you
So
just did that recently.
I just did that recently. I taught, I think it was Fear to Freedom. And then the year before that was Money DNA. And that's a very loved one, because
Oh,
people
I'm
want
sure.
to understand why I can and can't, will or won't have money. And what do I do about that? And they don't understand that money is a relationship, not a commodity. It's when they start to understand that things change. And that brought me to where I am today, where I will go into companies. I do a lot of coaching, C-suite, and then also high-profile individuals. And what I do is I take whatever's happening for them and we dimensionalize it. So we take what's in your head, put it out in front of you in 3D. And because you can now see it, touch it, taste it, hear it, you suddenly start to have these connections and an embodied experience of what's happening. And where you were stuck, you start to move. And a lot of where you're stuck is because you're stuck in the ancestry line. That pattern has come all the way down to you because it wants you to change it.
And that's what you're talking about, inheriting the emotional DNA from our ancestors.
Absolutely. Yep. Exactly.
Wow. So is this the systemic work? Is that what it's called?
That's systemic work. That's the study
Systemic
of
work.
you within your system.
Okay.
You didn't just plonk onto planet Earth. You came from a long line of ancestors, and all their sayings and all their mottos and all their doings and all their feelings and all the events, which is why I talk about genealogy 1, 2, 3. The events then created for you, or whoever it was, triggered emotions, thoughts, feelings, actions. Those became a language, which then became a mindset, and then became a pattern, and then became the truth. Only it's
Right.
not the truth, it's just your truth, and you can change it anytime you want to.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you mentioned, you said you take their patterns of thought, feelings, make it 3D. How do you do that? Are you using objects that represent something, or can you just explain that a
It
little more?
depends. If I'm at a live event, if I'm hosting a live event, then I'll use live representatives. So you'll come in and say to me, I've been depressed since I was a little girl. What happened when you were a little girl? Watched my mom. What happened to mom? What happened to grandma? What happened to great grandma? Oh, great grandma was married to the love of her life. He was killed and she was never the same after that. And she used to always say, you can't trust men because he left. It's a bit of a terminal leaving, but yes. So
Right.
that echoes down for all the women. You can't trust men and we are all depressed. But the purpose of that pattern when it gets to you is for you to look at it and say, how do I look for the gold in that? What is the gold? It's the happiness. It's the joy. So you begin to reframe that into something that's useful to you and starts to grow your system and then changes it for your children. Now, this is also well studied. It's epigenetics.
Right.
So with that epigenetic imprint as the result of a sustained emotion and sustained thoughts, feelings, and actions with the originating event, that creates an imprint on the genetic coding, and that affects your gene expression. So once you then decide or choose to change it with a sustained higher emotion, in other words, gratitude, joy, love, enthusiasm, and that creates an imprint. Now you've got something very different. Now you have children who say, I'm happy, I can, this is possible. And you move from living in what is to what's possible. And it happens both very deeply and quite often very quickly. So every day I will have somebody say to me, how have I sat with this problem for 20 years and we've just resolved it in 2 hours?
Yeah.
It's because of the embodied experience and because of those figures. So back to the question. So I will say to you, pick someone to represent your mom, your grandmother, your great grandmother, and you. Now give me a picture of how they are in relation to each other. And I might even ask for the men. and you'll set up a picture for me. Well, this one's close, this one's more distant. So now you can see it. And quite often that first picture where people go, oh, I didn't realize that I was so close to mom, or so much alike, or wow, yeah, mom and grandma were really close together that way. You start to see it instead of doing it here. And now you're making the connections because you can see the links, you can see the obstacles and the possibilities. And that begins to change everything at a very visceral level. And what happens is, instead of laying down a traumatic pathway, in other words, if it was traumatic and you have that instant peace, you can tell me everything that happened. You're now laying down a transformational pathway, but you're doing the same thing. You're wiring your brain to do something very different. And we're much mightier and much more powerful than we imagine. And we're very capable of doing that.
So I read something in some of the material that I was looking at, that you call a lot of these issues that people are going through golden nuggets.
Oh, yeah.
So why do you call it a golden nugget?
Because every time that you have a train smash, it's literally sitting there saying to you, what are you going to turn me into? I'm waiting. This is your opportunity. I'm waiting. So literally the pattern that's trying to stop is sitting right next to the pattern that wants to start. And it's saying to you, what are we doing? This one's saying, please, I've had enough. I need to rest. Use me as wisdom. This one is saying, I could have an adventure right here. So when you can feel that something really calls to your heart and you wish you could stop this, you're sitting right in that sweet spot. So train smashes are often your gold nuggets. They're literally saying to you, change me, change me, change me.
And these, what you're talking about, are things that just keep surfacing.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether
Why am
it's
I always
limiting
Yeah.
beliefs, imposter syndrome, like all of those things.
And imposter syndrome is one of my favorite because there's no such thing. It's
Right.
pioneer syndrome. Imposter syndrome simply says, I'm not any good at this, someone's going to find out. But what people don't realize is it's the pioneer that's going in search. So when you get those two and you reframe the one into the other, suddenly you realize you're a possibility thinker. That's what.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is incredible. Incredible. All right. So you talk about I want to just dive in a little bit more on the DNA, because I think it's just an area where we're still learning so much scientifically about DNA.
Right.
How, and maybe you're not, maybe this is out of your realm, but how are emotions transferred through DNA?
Okay, so that's the epigenetics I was talking about. So that's
Okay,
one
so
way.
that's the epigenetics. Okay.
Yeah, that's one way. But the other way is, think about it. I look at my mom and she's always sad. So I know that's how we are in this family. I'm sad. Yay, I'm in harmony with my mom, which means I belong in my family system. Great. If I'm suddenly very, very happy, I go, oh, mom's unhappy, but I'm happy. I don't quite know how to belong here. I better be unhappy again. So we learn those emotions. Yeah. And we keep learning it for generations and we pass it on.
Wow. That's pretty significant, Judy, actually. Wow. And so it's going to be even more, it's going to be at a more heightened scale, I would imagine, if you experience this from a very young age.
Absolutely. My poor mom.
Because that's all you know. That's all you know.
That's it. And you also, the child goes, my poor mom, if you're sad, me too. I'll share that with you.
Yeah.
And so we share for generations. In fact, I had someone who came to see me and started to cry. It was a public, or not a public event, but I mean a big event for the public. So she came to see me and she started crying and she couldn't stop and she couldn't stop and she couldn't stop. And she said to me, what's wrong with me? I don't understand. And we went back and had a look. And she said to me, I remember I knew my great-grandmother. She was very stoic. And my mom said she never cried. My grandmother didn't either. Neither did my mom. I said, tell me what happened to your great-grandmother. And she was the one who'd had somebody who was killed. She never cried. She just said, I have to get on with things in the family. There's no time for crying. So she was crying the tears for 3 generations. That's what was happening.
That, like, major chills. Wow. That's incredible. Wow. I hope if you're listening today, when you're listening today, I hope you're feeling this too, the significance of this. And because it's really eye-opening, right? Because a part of this too, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know there's a lot more to it, but the first step is always the awareness.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's the first step, I would say, even before that, is there's an awareness. You're right. Something wants to change. Something's
Yeah.
not okay. I
Yeah.
really am not good. So that's number one. Number two is the willingness to look. Because very often I work with families where they'll say, well, oh, no, nobody talks about that. The minute you hear somebody say nobody talks about that, it's a systemic issue, or we
Right.
all sweep that under the carpet. So that's number one. The other way that you know that you're dealing with a systemic issue is when you have a client like my other client who came in and said to me, first time I was meeting her, oh my goodness, I had a disaster. This morning was catastrophic. It was absolutely chaotic. I was almost decimated, and then I nearly didn't make it here. And I was like, what happened? And she said to me, well, I was a little bit late and the boss was cross. And I said to her, wait, those two don't track. What you've just said doesn't track with what you first said. You were talking about cataclysms and chaos. And so I said to her, is there a cataclysm in your system? I mean, is there a story of one? And she went, no. Well, maybe because my mother and I outran a volcano, but my brother and my father did not. So there it was. I mean, if you
Yeah.
listen to yourself, you're speaking the language of your system all day long. You just don't realize it. When you start to pay attention to your hot words or repetitive words or feelings that hit you for no good reason, or you have an explosion around something as simple as somebody eating a biscuit and spilling some or messing some crumbs on the carpet and say,
Right.
I'm going to kill you. Well, then you know you're dealing with something systemic. Why is it that you want to kill the person, and who did? So you begin
Yeah.
to ask those questions of your family system. Every time I have this, where does it come from?
Wow. 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 So, what do people do with this information? What's like, we know obviously things are being passed down, but how does one even get to a point? I mean, obviously they could come to you and work with you. That's one option. But what other resources out there? Because that's just not an opportunity. It may not be available to everybody.
Sure. Yeah, so I've got 2 books. And the reason I wrote the 2 books was for exactly that reason. It really wasn't to be good and smart, because everybody kept saying, write a book. And I was like, I'm not writing a book. And then they said, get a literary agent. I don't need a literary agent. But the books tell you what to do. The first book, Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint, actually takes you through. Sit down and write down everything think, feel, and do around money, for example. And then I want you so they do that. When did it start for you? What was happening in your life at the time? What did you make it mean about you? What did you make it mean about others? How do you wish it could be? And then I say, okay, now go back and write down everything about money the way you wish it would be. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your actions? How would you like it to be? When did you start having thoughts, feelings, and actions around how you would like it to be? What was happening in your life at the time? Then what you've got is the pattern that wants to stop and the one that's trying to happen. And what you can then do is look at the one that's trying to stop and thank it and acknowledge it and really let it rest and use that as for wisdom. I always say to people, wisdom isn't just about what to do, it's about what not to do. And then have a look at what excites you. Now, here's what's very important. If you want to move from A to B better be very much more exciting than A, or you're going to stay sitting on the sofa. It's that simple. And then that's what life is like. So if you've got a really humdrum, boring life, start figuring out what gets you so excited you can't stand yourself. And then start making plans to get there, because that's going to pull you past all of the excuses. It's going to pull you past all of the reasons for staying stuck, and it's going to put you into the field of possibility. And this work is based on the knowing field and the quantum field. So in other words, the field of everything that's ever been, ever existed, ever happened, and the possibility field. And you, of course, are in the Newtonian field, what's happening right now. The minute you start to say, I don't want to be unhappy anymore, I don't want to struggle anymore, and you start to get that little bubble in your tummy that gets excited, you're on your way to moving to the quantum field, which means you're now going to observe a new pattern into being. And guess what? That's going to change your emotional DNA. And quick thing for people who don't know what emotional DNA is, it's your patterns of thoughts, feelings, and actions that you inherit from those who come before you.
Wow.
Including in
Incredible.
companies.
Including what?
In companies.
Oh,
In
including
other
in
words,
companies, right.
yeah, in other words, you can inherit from a CEO. You can be CEO
Right.
number 6 and have inherited all of the thoughts, feelings, and patterns from that CEO, because that DNA lives in the company.
Right. Oh yeah, I can see that for sure. Yeah. Wow. This is so incredible. This is so incredible. So where's the best place for people to learn more about you? And, obviously the book is called Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint, correct?
That's number 1, yes.
That's number one. Yeah, that's the only one that I'm seeing here on your sheet.
Okay, so I'm going
and
to
it's
tell you about the other one. The other one is
perfect.
the hidden power in your DNA. And that's the one that goes through genealogy 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. 1.0 is congratulations, this is your DNA and this is where you belong. Number 2 is what are the events in my ancestry that have had an impact on my lineage? Number 3, how is that affecting me? You can have people who say, I don't want to move out of my house. Why not? It's too scary for me. I could get hurt. Have you ever been hurt? No, but I could get hurt. I could just get dragged away. What's going on? My family comes from the Holocaust. So it's tracing those back. So that's your genealogy 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. So they can find me there. They can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify I'm on a lot, LinkedIn, Facebook, pretty much anywhere that you can think of, you can find me.
Perfect.
And then, of course, at my website, judywilkins-smith.com. And then the other thing for somebody who wants to experience a constellation, because what I described to you was what we call a constellation.
Okay.
And to actually experience that, if you don't have access to me right now, but you want to feel what that feels like, I also laid down 2 constellations meditations. And I was super fortunate because for anybody who knows Joe Dispenza, the person who does the choreography, the composition for his work is the person who does them for mine. And it's designed to be at a healing frequency. So it'll take you all the way through what a constellation is like. It'll take you all the way back through your lineage, and then bring you back into the here and now. And I can't begin to tell you how important this is. It's not woo-woo. It's very well scientifically studied. And
Right.
once we begin to understand how logical yet transformative it is, people get super interested.
Well, how can you not when, folks, we're only here once, right? We don't get this day back. And I know for me, it's why I've been on this journey it'll be 35 years coming up
Wow.
very soon. And we can always be better. Every day I wake up and I want to be better. I want to be a better version of myself.
We can always be better. We can
Yeah.
always make magic, which is
Yeah.
really, really important. And this work is a whole lot of that, except that it shows you that you're the magic. And it shows
Right.
you very clearly how to keep making magic. and how to have fun while you're doing it. We were meant to have fun.
Yeah. I mean, you want to, I mean, it's so much easier to live a happy life.
Oh, it's so much. And yet, you know how difficult it is for people. It's like they often say to me, what does the universe say? And I say, look, the universe keeps saying if there was one word it could give us, it would be relax. Relax.
Just relax.
Yeah.
Because when we're pushing and we're working hard, right? That's actually resisting.
Yes.
And you're not allowing the flow to flow, you know.
No, absolutely. The other thing, of course, in a constellation is if I set up a constellation and we have all of these people standing around, what you'll see is somebody will say to me, I want to say something or I want to move. And then the clients will go, how'd they know to say that? How do they know to move like that? And people are very mystified by it. It's why it can get a reputation for being woo-woo, but it's not at all. If you've ever watched The Voice or America's Got Talent or American Idol, you will have, or even something like Wicked that's just come out. Every time I watch that, I get goosebumps just watching the little outtakes. And what you're doing is when you get goosebumps like that, you're sensing into people's systems. We've just never been taught that that's what we do, so we don't realize the magic in our hands. And we also don't realize that we are master magicians, because the minute the brain tells the body a story that the body believes, that becomes your new reality. And we're telling ourselves horror stories instead of adventures.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you brought that up. And that's a whole nother 30-minute show, Judy. But because yeah, I mean, you can really manifest physical ailments and just also, since you just said that, you know, stress,
Oh
you know,
my
when you're
goodness,
living,
the stress is not great.
and I can just share with the audience, because this isn't something somebody said, have you talked about this in your podcast? And I go, no, I haven't, but I will now. You know, I just recently had a very, you know, an event I was putting together, and I put my heart and soul into this event for 8 months. And it ended up, long story short, it ended up getting canceled. And the 30 days leading up to the decision to cancel it, I was so stressed that I started having physical problems with my digestive system.
Yeah. Oh,
And
of course you will. What can you not digest?
right, exactly. And it's so interesting because like it was so bad. There were days when I had trouble getting out of bed. And I knew exactly, because I'm extremely self-aware. I knew
Right.
exactly what was going on. I knew why it was happening. I knew where the stress was coming from. But until you know, I had to go through that process. And I thought, wow, this was right around, I just had my 59th birthday. And here's the thing. I don't take any medicine. I am completely healthy. I have nothing wrong with me. So for me to have issues in my digestive system was like, whoa, like that was such a rude awakening, because I hadn't experienced it at that level.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm here to say today, folks, that stress, it caused me to be so physically sick that it was mind-boggling, that I knew after a couple of days, I'm like, we need to wrap this up quickly, because I need to get this out of my life.
Yeah, well, what
Because
was
it was
also
causing,
happening was nobody was asking you the right question, which was, what do you need to be able to cancel? And what will you tell yourself about that will allow you to like yourself? Because there is a ton going on when that happens. A ton.
Oh, yeah.
I'm bad. I'm a failure. I've let people down. I put my heart into this. People are going to laugh at me. Yeah. Guess what? 90% of them didn't even want to try in the first place. You'll do it. Only next time you'll do it differently. But stress is a killer. I
is a
look
killer.
and I say to people, you have no idea. It is not, it's with disease. It's not the disease that kills. It's the stress.
Right. And stress is actually a man-made word, and it's just an illusion, really. And I can look back at all of that, the experience that I just had, and it was an illusion. It wasn't, I made it out to be this huge thing that made me physically sick. And
So what you want to ask is, You want to ask in your family system who did something that went very badly and it affected them to the extent that they got ill. Because your chances are very strong that somebody else failed before you. And if you don't know about that, you're going to hit that U-turn like they did.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
want to do it again, you first need to go and look in your family system and go, okay, what are our stories about success and failure? Because there's something here.
Well, thank you for that, Judy, because I'm sure there's a lot. Because I know my family tree and I'm sure there's quite a bit. So I'll definitely take a look at that. But we're about out of time. And this has just been absolutely incredible. You are definitely somebody that I want to have back on. We'll talk after I stop recording. But yeah, this has been really incredible. So thank
I'm
you.
so glad. I had fun.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be fun when you come on my show.
I like fun on your show. You create a very easy space to have fun. Thank you.
Well, good. Thank you, Judy. And thank you, everyone, for listening again. To reach Judy, you can check out the show notes and all of her information will be there. Please check out her book. And that there's meditations I will be checking out for sure, because that sounds incredible. So thank you so much. And for everybody listening, thank you so much for joining. And may you and your family be happy and healthy and that your lives are filled with peace, joy, and lots of love. Take care, everyone.